Hello, Fractured Protagonist here again. In today's video, I wanted to discuss the topic of quiet quitting in the workplace. This video will basically piggyback off the last video about being a wage slave. Now, quiet quitting is, in simple terms, an employee in their current day job just doing enough or the bare minimum just to keep their job. They're basically doing the job that they were hired to do, but for nothing exceeding or going above and beyond to stand out and impress their boss or higher ups. A quiet quitter won't send their 2 week notice or otherwise clearly stated intention of leaving. So, the quiet quitter is basically the type of employee that has been thinking about this for a long time for various reasons, maybe just not being happy at the workplace or the work conditions, or it could also be that they have coworkers that they don't mesh well with, and especially a boss that just doesn't meet the standards of a typical supervisor or someone that actually looks out for their employees. So the first sign of a quiet quitter is that they strictly just meet their minimums. They complete their core tasks or duties, but avoid taking on extra work or taking initiative. You're no longer passionate or connected to your job. You are mentally resigned or checked out. So, this first point might actually touch upon why people in the corporate world may start to feel like they're just basically wage slaves. And then they become this quiet quitter, or maybe considering it because of all these things that happen in the office, which turns them into the employee that just really does the bare minimum and avoids more work. And to be quite honest, I don't think anybody wants to actually do more work than they're paid to do unless they want to show off to their boss and are really trying to climb that corporate ladder into the next level of their position, whatever that may be. And that next level of position may garner them more pay and, might help pay more bills and whatnot. And that's strictly up to the employee and whatever they want to do with the rest of their career. And in a lot of cases, trying to climb that corporate ladder, you're really not the only one that might be climbing that same ladder to get to that next level for that next, I guess, higher paycheck. So it becomes this competition of sorts, and then you might start asking yourself if it's actually really worth it to climb that corporate ladder for a few more bucks to your paycheck. And more often than not, that extra dollar or two really isn't worth all of that extra work that you might do after hours or over the weekend when you could use that spare time to work on something like a passion project. And honestly, I'd honestly really rather do that. Spending more time with your loved ones for myself seems like the better bet. Now, onto the second point where your development or growth in the workplace is on a purposeful decline. So you stop volunteering for new projects, training, or leadership roles, seeing them as more work for the same pay. Fair compensation will come to mind when asked to do these extra tasks. Now, in my personal experience, this rings true because I've done those overnights many, many times. I've worked some weekends in the past where I thought climbing the corporate ladder would actually be worth my time. But in the end, I just lost the time that I'm never going to get back. And that just hits me hard still today, even though I don't do that anymore, because knowing that I lost that time in the past, it just, it doesn't, it's never going to be worth it for anybody in the long run. I've never known anyone in the workplace to get super excited about having to do extra hours beyond what they're getting paid to do, beyond their 9 to 5, and put their hands up and say, "Hey, I'll do it. I'll do it." Unless you're really that specific person that loves to just hunker down and stare at your screen every single day, including the weekends. Personally, that's not me. That's just a little too masochistic for my taste. Now, on to the third point, reduced engagement among your coworkers or peers. You are present at the workplace but aren't participating in any meetings or events, not sharing ideas, or disengaged socially altogether, and just do the work. A lack of recognition could play a part in this as well. Employees experiencing this may feel unseen for the contributions they added to the company, but instead are given more tasks, which make them feel undervalued. So maybe you're not being recognized for all those extra hours that you put into the office past 5 o'clock, or checking up on those emails on Saturdays and Sundays just before you go back to the office on Monday morning. And you could start feeling a little hint of resentment towards the company or your superiors, and that'll cause you to feel disengaged and not want to put in any more energy to, do any kind of work-related efforts with your coworkers and your superiors. So if you're new to the industry or maybe just fresh out of college, you'll want to work for a company and show them that you've got what it takes and you have all the energy in the world, do everything and then some. And you want to keep proving yourself and just make sure that they can see you and basically try to appreciate all the value that you're trying to put on the table for them. And a lot of companies like this employee, the new one who is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and will just do everything the company says. And the most part, they'll do it for a way lower price tag than usual. And since these employees are mostly college grads, they're new to the game, so they won't really feel the burnout until much, much later. And they'll just put in all the extra hours thinking that they're gaining all the experience that they'll need and their bosses will love them for it and maybe in the future give them a nice raise if they earn it enough. But if you're on the opposite side of this spectrum where you've put in years and years of your time, overtime, after hours, weekends, then you'll start to realize that all that stuff, all the time that you've put in was just wasted effort because you might not have climbed that corporate ladder as far as you thought you have. And you'll really start considering the fact that maybe it's time to slow down a little bit in the office and not stop doing your work completely, but just do what you're actually being paid to do and scale back on all those extra hours that you put in, or just put a complete stop to that. Now, this idea came across my mind years ago when my son was still a little younger, and I started thinking about how I could spend more time with him because spending the majority of my day in an office where I can't really be as productive as I can be. Had I not been home most of the time, I started just second guessing the reasons why I was there, just crunching away in front of the computer. And at first, I thought these were ridiculous ideas, telling myself, I need this job. I got to pay bills. I got to put food on the table. I got to put a roof over our heads so that we can live in relative comfort and not feel so stressed all the time. Then, as more time passed, more of the stress was starting to come from the actual workplace, and realizing that I was losing more time with myself and my son and just putting more hours into a place that I felt like was just stealing them and not really giving back any kind of appreciation apart from that paycheck that I was given every few weeks. And this is more of a reminder to myself as much as it is to you guys, but all that lost time will never be gained back or given back by anybody or any company ever. You're just going to realize that you have a set amount of time left on this earth and you have to choose how you'd want to spend it, whether it's quality or quantity. So now on to the fourth point of a work-life balance being absolute. So I touched upon this point in my last video, but it bears repeating. And the reason is because when you have that typical 9 to 5 job, there really isn't a balance. It's basically imbalanced. You're always at the office. Most of your day is spent from morning, noon, and nighttime up to 5 o'clock doing all the work that you're given, all the tasks that you're given, and then maybe sometimes even during a part of your lunch break, you have to do some work stuff. And that has happened to me more often than not. And I've had my lunch hours cut down to like 45 minutes because of tasks that I had to complete or whatever deadlines that I had to meet for the week. And it becomes really tiresome because you're never given that much of a break at all. I mean, even during a lunch break, you are not thinking about other stuff. You're still literally thinking about that project that's still in the middle of being completed while you're eating or outside taking a walk or running errands. And your brain is just always running on that clock. So then it starts becoming more of a transaction of your time and energy levels apart from whatever work you're doing. So then that bleeds into the fifth point of a transactional mindset. You see your job as nothing more than a paycheck, feeling little loyalty or emotional connection to the company's mission, viewing it as purely a means to an end. So when this happened to me, my mind just went on autopilot and did every task that I was given, really without putting too much thought or connection to the project I was dealing with. And as a graphic designer, you want to be as creative as you can, but at the same time, the company has a set number of rules that you have to follow in order to not cross any boundaries because of that project that you're given. This becomes even more of a big deal in the world of commercial graphics because you're dealing with a lot of brand names. So each brand name has their own set of rules of how to apply the logo and the brand identity, etc., etc. So you have to make sure that you follow the guidelines, or else you have to do the project over again, or maybe scale back the project that you're doing so that it meets all the company guidelines. So when you put a transactional mindset on top of all that, it just becomes more of a grind. So not only does quality start going down the drain, but your morale starts going down the drain with it. And this funny thing starts happening when morale is lost. You start seeing your coworkers and superiors for what they actually are. And it's not just all sunshine and roses when you come into the office and, everyone gets along and everything is hunky dory, but you start seeing more of the cracks on the wall and just all the chinks in the armor, and maybe the relationships you've had in the office space weren't so nice to begin with. And it starts to feel like everybody is just kind of playing this role, just kind of acting or doing their part to be part of this team. Which brings me to my sixth point of the toxic work culture. No employee is going to want to take part in any team efforts once they realize that the people that they work with aren't being really genuine or authentic in any way, and are just going to start quietly withdrawing into themselves. One of the biggest issues I've had in the past with most of the companies I've worked for is just the biggest lack of communication. So either you're told one thing or another and it doesn't match up, or you're not told anything at all and you're missing information, being out of the loop, and then being blamed for it. In corporate culture, if it's not harassment and bullying, it's looking for someone to be a scapegoat for all the issues that are happening. In the end, quiet quitting can often be from mental, physical, as well as emotional exhaustion. This feeling washes over the employee, leaving them feeling undervalued and drained. It's not necessarily laziness, but employees with this mindset feel burned out from losing their time and energy due to excessive work demands. Anyway, let me know in the comments if any of this was helpful to you. If you've had your own experiences, share them down below. Subscribe if you feel like it, that would be awesome. This has been Fractured Protagonist reminding you guys to keep it simple. Talk to you guys later.